Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Reality Writes. I am author Ellie Alexander. This is the podcast where we talk about all things bookish, writerish, readerish, and I'm here with the tech guy, as always.
Hello. What are we talking about today?
Today, we are going to talk about 5 things that really trip up new writers, especially in a first draft.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So these are 5 things new writers should watch out for when they're creating the first draft of their book. Is this mystery specific or is this any?
This is pretty global, I would say.
Okay.
And this is after you've written a first draft. So you've finished a book.
Okay.
And now you're going through it and you're doing the first pass. And these are all things that I have had to learn over time myself. And I've
Okay.
improved on, obviously, over the course of 15 years. And when I'm teaching and coaching writing students, I see these patterns time and time and again. And I notice a lot of writers, you get so excited because you've finished a first draft, which is giant. It's monumental. You should,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, seriously,
Jinx.
right?
Yeah.
Jinx.
Yeah.
You've written a book. Like, you should celebrate. You should do all the things. But what tends to happen is you then are just like, I got to send it out in the world. Like, it's ready. I finished a book. Go, 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 go. And books and writing take time and they take distance. And you have to sort of step out of yourself and the story to be able to come back in and go, okay, that was great. I did it. Now we need to fix it. So these are 5 things that I see consistently time and time again when I'm coaching writers.
Interesting. All right. I'm very curious to hear what these are because this is like I would say that 99% of the time when it comes to episodes of Reality Writes, like we'll have a big discussion and plan out episodes and like really, dive deep on topics. But when we get into these very writer focused topics, I'm obviously a layperson. Like, I don't know. I've picked up a thing or two over the years, just being with you. But this is your show, so it's going to be. I'm going to learn. So let's hit it. What's number
Yeah,
one?
you're gonna learn, but also right before I get to number 1, I hope for the darlings out there that are readers, it'll be interesting for you too, because you might, as we're going through this list, pick up on books maybe that you've read that you're like, ooh, actually, yeah, I noticed this, or, things that might pull you out of a story, let's say. And also just to be aware of like all those layers that go into creating a finished book. It's not usually that I don't know any single writer that has
No,
finished a first draft and the book is done. Like, it just doesn't happen.
yeah, no, totally. And those are both very good points and exactly where I'm coming from because I am not a writer, so I am very interested because I'm as we go through these 5 things, I'm going to be thinking about all the books I've read and trying to think, well, did I see any of that in any of those books? And then, yes, the other piece, like being married to you and seeing the progression of your writing over the years and everything, that is, I would say, the number one thing that readers don't understand or don't fully comprehend, I would say, because I think a lot of people clearly know that like writing a book takes more than just writing that first draft and then putting it out in the world. But what they don't really fully comprehend is like the revs of the book, right? Like
Yeah.
the layering, the editing, all of the things that go into it. And then it goes to the publisher or an editor, and then it comes back and you do it all over again.
Ooh, 2 or 3 times. Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is definitely a peek behind the curtain as
For sure.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
And
right.
if you're a darling that's new to writing, or you're, working on a first book or just getting started in the process, hopefully like you take a few notes on this and it's something that will help you when you're going through your first draft too.
Yeah.
Okay. So without further ado, we will get to number 1. I would say the number 1 thing that I see the most often is that scenes are taking place in a vacuum.
Ooh, what does that mean?
So you have characters
Mm-hmm.
and they're maybe talking to each other. something's happening, but this scene could be taking place on Mars or it could be taking place in North Dakota. There's nothing else happening in the world around the story. And this tends to happen a lot with mystery writers because mysteries are plot driven, right? And when I teach, I talk to writers all the time about the fact that, like, okay, we're starting with a body and then we need suspects and we need these twists and turns and red herrings. So that is all true. And that's important that you get down in your first draft. But as you're coming back to a manuscript with fresh eyes, then it's time to start thinking about, like, oh, what is happening in the world around this story? It cannot take place in a vacuum because it's not a fun experience for a reader. Have you ever,
Is that?
like, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, is that where the phrase "set the scene" comes from?
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
that
And
makes
I don't know
sense.
if you've had an experience. I know I've had an experience of reading even finished books where I'm like, wait, where are we? Like, whose POV are we in? Like, like if you're getting confused as a reader, that means I have not done my job correctly as a writer by creating that world that we are anchoring this story in.
Yeah, I have had that happen. Names of the books aren't important, but
Right.
where in a book there are, let's say, like there's like a quick sequence of events
Mhm,
happening,
mhm.
but they're taking place in different places.
Right.
Maybe the characters are moving through different, let's say 3 different buildings, and the author sees all of this in their head, but it doesn't make it down onto the page, so that you
Ding, ding, ding.
you are reading and you're like, well, wait, but they
Wait,
were just
wait.
up on the second floor and now they're on the street. How did they get out in the street? Like, right, and it takes you out of the story. It makes you stop, and it's jarring. It
It's
really
super
kind
jarring.
of, yeah.
And it's so fixable and one of those things that once you know it, so my advice when I'm coaching new writers is like, okay, now that you have that draft, as you're reading through it a second time, like, make sure that you know and you're showing the reader where we are, and if you're moving to a room, if we're suddenly outside in the cold, it needs to stay cold. You can't step outside and it's 100 degrees when it was just -2 below, or all of those things that are going to drag you as the reader out of the story, because that's a point when a lot of readers might just stop reading.
Yeah, DNF.
Oof, could happen. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so
All
number
right.
one is scenes that are just happening in a vacuum.
Okay.
Number two, this is a big one. Too many characters.
Oh, now this one I'm very familiar with.
I'm speaking your language.
Very familiar with,
I've
and
hooked 'em, darlings. So bring
and
the bait.
I'm not going to say it, but that I read a book recently where this was a massive, massive problem, in my opinion. It was
Yeah.
just like, not only were there too many characters, but several of them had very similar names. And
Ooh.
I'd go pages thinking that the character was referring to another character, but then realizing, oh, wait, he's been talking about this other woman this whole time. And I'd just be like, oh, yeah.
Oh. Yeah. And again, this kind of plays to the same concept as, having a scene that's happening in a vacuum where we don't know where we are in space and time and nothing is grounded in reality. And by reality, like, even in a sci-fi or fictional world, you still have to know where you are. That's why I'm saying, like, if it's Mars or some made up planet or whatever, the upside down, like, you need to know where you are. Too many characters, you as the author might have a good sense of who all these characters are, but characters need to be able to engage and interact with each other, and especially in a mystery, this is unique to the mystery more so than other genres, they also have to move the plot forward. So in a
Mm.
mystery, let's say if you have 17 suspects, no one is retaining all of those suspects. It's too much. And I think
Right.
sometimes it's too much. I think sometimes it's a crutch for new writers because it's like, oh, okay, I'll throw this person in because then they're also suspicious, but it doesn't work. And a lot of times, what I see in a mystery is someone who comes in at the end, and we've seen this in
Oh,
shows that we
yeah.
watch.
I know what
It's
you're going
really
to say.
fitting to bring somebody in who we haven't met for, let's say the book is
Right.
300 pages. And suddenly at page 279, you're introducing someone and they end up being the killer? No, absolutely not. Because
Right.
in a mystery, you darlings get the same opportunity to solve the book as the sleuth. So you have to play fair.
Yeah, it's like, it was the guy that changed his oil. And it's like, wait, what? Like,
What?
where did that guy
Mhm.
come from?
Yeah,
Yeah, it just,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
especially when you're, if you're working on a series, I talk a lot about this in my course and when I'm coaching students, you really need to do a slow build of the secondary cast of characters. Those characters are gonna continue to grow and expand in time, but they don't all need to be in the first book. And so really thinking about, like, what are these characters doing to propel the story forward? How are they engaging with each other? How are they creating conflict and tension? But not 47 characters in a
Right,
novel. It's too many.
right. Well, and they don't all need to be included in the first or introduced in the first book. And is it fair to say then too, they don't all need to be in every subsequent book?
Absolutely, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially, like, if we think of Bake Shop, for example, because the Bake Shop has grown over time, of course,
Hmm.
and so I'll have multiple books where you might not see one of the secondary characters, and then they find their way back in, just like, maybe they're off on vacation or they're working at a different
Right.
spot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. That makes sense.
number 3. You can't see my hands if you were watching this, darling, sorry. Number
L-
3 is info dumping.
Info dumping. Ooh,
Mhm.
that sounds
So
bad.
it's bad. It's bad. It's easy to do, and it's something that happens a lot when you're new to writing because you have all this information in your head about the character or the story or the idea, and you wanna just sort of vomit it on the page to start. So this is where, instead of showing us, you're just telling us a lot. It's like, okay, this person is this and they're that and they're this and la 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 la. And we're getting backstory about someone's second grandmother twice removed and what happened at her afternoon tea that has nothing to do with the current plot. Maybe
Mm,
that is essential later on to some other thing, but finding ways to taper the information that you're sharing about a character because that adds tension. If you're peppering in these little Easter eggs early on and then we're slowly learning, but if it's all front loaded, it doesn't matter. And then we as the reader aren't going to be connected to this character because we don't really know them short of just kind of this word vomit on the page, for lack of a better
r-
word. Sorry.
right. Well, and if you learn absolutely everything about a character in the first like 50 pages, by page 250,
Yeah.
there's no way you remember that. I
No.
mean, what would like be the primary cause for info dumping? Is it a word count thing? Like what, like for including information that isn't relevant to the plot, for example, like you said, second grandmother twice removed or whatever, or second cousin twice removed. Like
Yeah.
what, what would, what would cause that?
I think because, when you're first starting a novel, and this is something that I talk a lot about, you wanna know more than you need to know about your character. But
Mm,
you need to know that as the writer, the reader doesn't need to know everything up front. And so a
okay.
lot of times the process is that you've created all of these backstories and arcs and connections, and you just lay them all out on the page for us, and then there's no mystery to it because we're seeing it all. Like, play your
Mm,
cards a little
yeah.
closer to the chest, let those build.
Right. Right.
Sometimes
Okay.
less is more.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that's number 3. What's
That's
number
number
4?
3. Number 4 is no emotional arc for your main character.
Oh.
Mhm. So we wanna see ourselves on the page, or we want to learn something about a character. We need to see a character grow and evolve and change and struggle. And, especially in the mystery genre, one thing I see often with new writers is like, "Okay, so this horrific thing has happened. Your
Mhm.
character has stumbled upon a dead body, and they're just immediately solving the crime. Well, wait a minute, hold up. Like, what is your emotional response to finding a dead body? I don't think you're just
Right.
gonna be like, "Okay, it's me. I'm ready to go. Let me get my pen." Um,
Right.
yeah, so making sure that you're building an authentic emotional arc throughout the story. Not just
Mm.
in response to finding the body or, suddenly being confronted by a killer and, like, fearful of your life, but also, like, what other things are going on in their world, in their are they, looking for love? Are they in a breakup? Do they have family issues and resentments? You're not dumping this all at the beginning. This isn't about
Right.
info dumping. You're taking all of that and you're layering it in as you go.
That's so interesting and actually very timely because just the other night, and this I think is one way that illustrates where books are, probably have an advantage over like TV or movies in that, TV or movies are constrained by time. But we just had a discussion about this after we watched a mystery. I can't remember, it was a BBC mystery or whatever. It's not
Yeah.
important. But I said the something that is common in every crime show, in every murder mystery that we watch is somebody is murdered and
Mhm.
then the investigator goes to that person's family or significant other and is like, we're sorry, this person's been murdered. And they're like, oh no. And then like cut to the next scene and they're like, okay. And they're just
Yeah.
calm, cool and collected, just providing all this information to the investigator, even trying to help solve the crime in some way.
Right.
Like they're not collapsed on the floor in a pool of their own tears. Like they're going about business as usual. So I
Yes.
imagine that's what you're talking about, right? It's like having a
Exactly.
more realistic like arc in terms of like on the page. I feel like as a writer, you have more opportunity or more leeway to describe that and to take the reader through that than TV and film producers do because you can only get so much done in a 60-minute mystery, which is usually 42 minutes to account for advertising. So
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. No, you've nailed it completely, and that's really what I think a lot of new writers don't see in their first draft, which is why when you're going back to it for a second or third time, being aware of these few things can really help where you're like, "Oh, wait, is my character responding to the fact that there's a dead body, like, in the middle of her bake shop? How would I feel? How would I respond?" And it doesn't matter if the response doesn't match, what readers might think. Maybe they have a completely bizarre reaction to it. Maybe they're happy, like, I don't know, like, it doesn't matter
oh
what the
yeah,
what the emotional reaction is, but there needs to be an emotional arc and a thread that goes throughout it. And then also, how does that continue? How do you follow that line through? Like, okay, halfway through the book, are they like feeling a little more motivated and determined because they're personally invested now? And how is that rippling out to their other relationships? So making sure you have a clear sense of the emotional layer of the book is so important.
definitely, yeah, yeah. That is very relatable. It hopefully they're not happy because be like another dead body. Yes.
Yes, I don't know. Maybe they're the secret serial killer and we don't know. Like, it
Oh
could
yeah,
be.
little
Yeah.
Dexter action. Yeah.
A little Dexter action, or they're baking something special in the pie, I don't know,
Oh
like,
wow.
could be.
Yeah, it could be, but at least it'd be there, even if they were
That's
happy.
right.
It would
That's
be
what
the
I'm
arc
saying,
would be
yes,
there.
uh-huh,
Yeah. Okay.
right, mhm.
Yeah.
Or maybe
Got
they're
it.
furious and they're like, "How
Yeah.
dare you mess up my pristine kitchen," yeah.
Totally. Yeah. All right. That was 4. That brings us to number 5.
Number 5, last but certainly not least, is stilted dialogue, or dialogue that does not feel authentic.
Oh,
This
interesting.
one is it's a tough one for new writers, and it's something that, it took me a while and lots of practice and, lots of help from my mentor teachers back in the day to get right. First of all, dialogue also needs to move the story forward. In a book, we don't need Hi, tech guy. How are you today? I'm fine. How are you? Oh, tech guy. Hi. We don't one crutch that I see a lot is using a character's name over and over, and sometimes like a first and
Oh,
a last name. I got you again. Yes, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I just read you an example of a book I was reading where the character's name was used like 7 times on the same page. And I was like, I know that it's Janice. Like, I
Yes.
just, like,
God, it's
yeah,
Janice. Don't tell me
yeah,
again. Right? And we don't
yeah,
talk like that in real life.
right.
And I mean, maybe we do. I don't tend to be like, and so blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Um, so you're just as a writer, that's an area to improve because the reader's going to pick up on that. Um, and also, what are we learning from the dialogue? And dialogue, like going back to our first one, where a scene just happens in a vacuum, dialogue shouldn't happen in a vacuum either. We don't, you can't see me, but like I'm pretending that I'm just like have my hands folded in front of me and I'm staring straight at the tech guy. We don't just talk back and forth at each other, right? This
Right.
happens a
Right.
lot in a first draft of writing. It's just like he said, she said, he said, she said. That's great for a first draft. In a second draft, what are the movements? What else is happening? Am I taking a sip of water? Am I fiddling with my earring? Like, what are those physical cues? What internal thoughts are we also having? Because even when you're saying something, I might be thinking something in my head as you're talking, like, do I believe this guy? Is he telling me a lie right now? Like, is he the killer? You need all of those additional layers in addition to whatever the character's saying. So they're saying one thing, but are they feeling something else internally? Are they acting
Hmm.
strange?
Interesting. That so would this also include characters using words or language that from based on what you know of them would be out of character?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a theory for why that's happening.
Okay.
It's
Interesting. Yeah.
AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's AI. No, I mean, so this isn't book writing specific, but this happens in the corporate world. I'll get an email from a coworker, and it'll have like 3 words. I'm like, buddy, I've worked with you for 7 years. You've never used those words once
You
in
don't
your
know what that
life.
word
I
means.
don't even think you could spell that word. Like,
Right?
like
Yes.
it just, and that takes you out of, like, it makes me angry when I read the message, when in reality, maybe the coworker was just asking me to lunch or whatever, but it's like, would you like to dine with me later? Or what? I'm like, dine? What?
I
Like, no.
request the pleasure of dining
Yeah.
with you at noon. Yeah. Yeah, and,
Yeah.
that's something that will come up with copy editors, for example. This is obviously later down in the process, but once, you have a book contract and you're working with the editorial staff at the publishing house, a copy editor might come and, like, wanna correct your grammar and dialogue, but, like,
Yeah.
Jules is never gonna say, "For whom, will I be
Right.
doing blah, blah, blah," right? I mean, that might be the proper way to say it, but
Right.
if we're having a real conversation with somebody, I'm gonna say, "Who's coming tonight?" Or, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
so you need to make sure that your dialogue is authentic to the characters. One tripping point to this actually made me think of it when you were saying that is, accents.
Mm.
They can like, a little goes a long way. But if you're using somebody that's, like, talking like a country bumpkin and all of that dialogue is like that, that can get really taxing for the reader, so there are some
Oh,
interesting ways where you
interesting.
can maybe, like, pepper that in, but you're not having that be the main focus of the dialogue.
So the character could have like a catchphrase that's in, whatever,
Exactly.
dialect or regional specific language
Uh-huh.
that they're using, but then the rest of the time they're pretty much straightforward, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes
But
sense.
yeah, and then dialogue should serve a purpose. It could be an argument, it could be a reveal, it could be, so many interesting things, but it shouldn't be wasted on just talking about like, I am picking up the phone now to call so and so. Like, you don't use dialogue in the same way that we would an everyday conversation unless there's a purpose for that for the story.
Right. Okay. So I am going to pick up the phone now and call your dad is not the same as I'm calling your dad,
Right.
right? Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because I
And
would
like,
never, yeah.
do we need to know that you're calling is that central to
Right.
the plot? Because if it isn't,
I,
I don't need to know that. Like,
I think
yeah.
that goes back to, what was it, number 3, info dumping, right?
Yes,
So,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
They all really
Uh,
tether together. It's kind
th-
of,
I, I'm
too bad.
actually seeing that. Yeah. Now that I think of it, recap them again. We had scenes in vacuums was number
Scenes in
1.
vacuum. Mhm. Number
Too,
2
too
was,
many characters.
too many characters.
Number
3 is
2 for
info
2.
dumping.
Yeah. 3 is info dumping.
4 is emotional arcs.
Okay.
And 5 is stilted, inauthentic dialogue.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. If you've got all 5 of those going on in your first draft, like it's gonna be a bit of work.
You probably do have all 5 of those going on in
Okay.
your first draft, and that's okay. Like, you should. The key now is to, in your second and
Catch
third
it.
and fourth draft, be aware and add those
Okay.
layers in. So don't
Got
beat
it.
yourself up for that. It's an awareness issue, because then I think what happens is you get so excited, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I've written a book, it's done." It's probably not
Mhm.
done. It's gonna take a few more passes with having these things in mind to flesh it out to a point where it's ready for beta readers or an editor or whatever's next.
So the goal is to not have these 5 things in the final draft.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
These are common
Yeah.
in every first draft. There's still things that I do in a first draft. I don't have a lot of fluid movement around my dialogue in a first draft. It is a lot of like placeholders. He walked, they sat, blah, blah, blah. Now, because I've been writing for so long, I tend to flesh out more of my world as I go, just because I've I've been in it for so long. It's easy to do. But I
Mhm.
still use this list with every second and third pass that I take to go, okay, wait, is this happening in a vacuum? How is this character feeling right now? What are they concealing? So
And I imagine that takes some practice too, right? To
yeah,
understand that you have to really look at this from the lens of a reader to
that's right.
understand what from a reader's perspective, where do they think this action is taking place right now?
That's right.
Because in your head as the writer, because and especially you, because I know
Right.
how you write, like you're envisioning yourself in that place, sitting
Yes.
there watching this take place while you're writing
Yes.
it.
That's right.
So I imagine once you get to that point, it also might be difficult to not do that, right? To just assume that, well, everybody knows that I'm sitting here in Tort
Yeah.
next to Andy and Jules having this conversation in a booth by the window,
There you
right?
go. Right. Yeah. I'm at Tort. Where at Tort? Are you downstairs? Are you in the kitchen?
Right,
Are you by the fireplace?
right.
Yeah. So, like, yes, having that lens as you're going back through, and really then being much more aware and critical of your own space and time on the page.
Yeah. No, that's good advice.
Yeah. And for
Cool.
all you darlings out there, if you've read some books like this, which I think we all probably have, it's good insight for you to fix that for your own.
Yeah. So that'd be a good question out there for the darlings listening. Like, have you run into these things in books? And we don't need to name
Yeah. Don't
titles.
name names.
Like, let's
Yeah.
not
Right.
let's not
No.
drag anybody through the mud here. Like, it's
No.
just. But it would be interesting to know, like, for the listeners out there, who like how many of these things have you encountered in books? I'm just curious because I know myself in going through these, and this list was surprising. You probably saw and heard my reaction to a few of them. I I have myself encountered these in final drafts before, so some of them very recently.
Yeah, and what are the things that then make you also as a reader go, "Oh, no."
Yeah, totally.
Mhm,
Yeah, let us know in the comments. Yeah.
absolutely. Alright, well, I hope that's helpful, and, I guess that means it is until next time.
Until next time, thanks for listening to another episode of Reality Writes.